Question 1. A new client has just started services with you, and you're gathering information. The client's parent asks if you can talk about the progress of another child you work with who has a similar diagnosis, just to get an idea of what to expect. How should you respond based on ethical guidelines? A. Share general progress without using the other child's name. B. Explain that you cannot share information about other clients due to confidentiality. C. Ask the other child's parent for permission to share their information. D. Share the information but ask the parent to keep it confidential. Answer. B. Explain that you cannot share information about other clients due to confidentiality. This question is all about client confidentiality, which is a core ethical principle in behavior analysis. The keyword here is share information about another child. Confidentiality means keeping private information private. You can't talk about one client's case, progress, or details with anyone else unless you have explicit permission or it's required by law. Like reporting abuse, even if the other child has a similar diagnosis or you omit their name, discussing their specific progress violates their right to privacy. Asking for permission is a good thought, but you still can't discuss it without permission first, and the request itself puts you in a tricky spot. Sharing and asking the parent to keep it confidential is also unethical. The original sharing is the violation. Always remember that each client's information is sacred and belongs only to them or their legal guardian, and those directly involved in their care. Here's a simple rule. If you don't have specific, written consent to share a client's information, you don't share it. Question 2. You are working with a client in their home. The client's mother offers you a homemade meal and a small gift card to your favorite coffee shop as a thank you for your hard work. What is the most ethical course of action? A. Graciously accept both the meal and the gift card. B. Accept the meal but politely decline the gift card. C. Politely decline both the meal and the gift card. D. Accept the gift card but politely decline the meal. Answer. C. Politely decline both the meal and the gift card. This question tests your understanding of avoiding conflicts of interest and maintaining professional boundaries, specifically regarding gifts. The scenario involves a client's parent offering both food and a gift card. While refusing food in someone's home can sometimes feel awkward culturally, ethical guidelines often advise against accepting gifts, especially those that have a monetary value like a gift card, as they can create a dual relationship or the appearance of being influenced. Accepting the meal is less problematic than a gift card, but the safest and most ethical approach to avoid any potential boundary crossing or conflict of interest is to politely decline both, explaining that your professional ethics don't allow you to accept gifts from clients. It keeps the relationship focused purely on professional services. Remember, the goal is to avoid anything that could complicate the professional relationship or be seen as potentially influencing your decisions. Your value comes from your skills, not accepting presents. Question 3. Before starting any behavior analysis services, you need to get permission from the client or their legal guardian. What is the term for this process where you explain the services and potential risks and benefits, and they agree freely? A. Assent. B. Consent. C. Confidentiality. D. Report. Answer. B. Consent. This question is about the critical step of getting permission before providing services, which is called consent. The description includes explaining the service's risks and benefits and getting agreement, which are key parts of informed consent. Assent is agreement from someone who can't legally give consent, like a child, but it's not the legal permission needed to start services. Confidentiality is about privacy, and rapport is about building a good relationship. Before you can do anything clinical with a client, you need to make sure they, or the person legally responsible for them, understand what you plan to do and agree to it without being forced. This protects their rights and ensures they are active participants in the process. Think of it like signing a permission slip for a school trip. You need to know where you're going, why, and agree to it. Always get informed consent documented before starting any assessment or intervention. Question 4. You are supervising a new RBT. Registered behavior technician. You notice they are struggling to implement a specific procedure correctly, which is impacting the client's progress. What is your ethical responsibility as a supervisor? A. Terminate the RBT's supervision immediately. B. Document the issue and report it to your supervisor. C. Provide additional training and support to the RBT. D. Reduce the RBT's hours with that specific client. Answer: C. Provide additional training and support to the RBT. This question focuses on the ethical responsibilities of a supervisor to their supervisees. The keyword is struggling to implement a procedure, indicating a performance issue that needs support. As a supervisor, your role isn't just to oversee, but also to train and develop your supervisees' skills. If an RBT is struggling, the ethical response is to provide them with the necessary guidance, training, and support to improve their competence. Immediately terminating supervision or reducing hours without attempting to correct the issue isn't ethical unless the performance is harmful or doesn't improve despite support. Reporting to your own supervisor might be necessary in some organizational structures, but it doesn't replace your primary responsibility to address the issue directly with the RBT through training. Your job is to help them succeed and provide quality services. Think of supervision as coaching. When a player struggles, the coach provides more training, not immediate removal from the team. Question 5. When advertising your behavior analysis services, which of the following is ethically permissible? A. Stating that your services are guaranteed to cure autism. B. Using testimonials from former clients without their permission. C. Listing your credentials accurately, example, BCBA, your degree. D. Promising specific outcomes for all clients. Answer: C. Listing your credentials accurately, example, BCBA, your degree. This question is about ethical guidelines for public statements and advertising. The concept being tested is truthful and non-misleading representation of your services and qualifications. Ethical advertising means being accurate and avoiding false promises. Stating you can cure conditions like autism or promising specific outcomes for all clients is unethical because behavior analysis focuses on modifying behavior and teaching skills, not curing diagnosis, and outcomes vary greatly from person to person. Using testimonials requires explicit permission from the client to protect their privacy. Listing your credentials accurately, however, is not only permissible but expected. It helps potential clients understand your qualifications and expertise. It's important to represent yourself and the field honestly and avoid exaggerations or guarantees that can't be made. Be truthful and transparent about who you are and what you can offer. Question 6. You are asked to provide services for a new client, but you realize you don't have experience working with their specific age group and challenging behaviors. What is the most ethical step to take? A. Accept the case anyway. You can learn as you go. B. Decline the case and refer the client to someone with appropriate competence. C. Accept the case but only work under close supervision from an expert. D. Accept the case but inform the parents that you lack experience. Answer: B. Decline the case and refer the client to someone with appropriate competence. This question deals with the ethical principle of competence, only practicing within your areas of expertise. The keyword is don't have experience with this specific population and behavior profile. Ethically, you have a responsibility to provide services only when you are qualified to do so. Accepting the case and learning as you go could potentially harm the client if you make mistakes due to lack of knowledge, while working under supervision, option C, might be possible in some circumstances. The most straightforward and safest ethical path, when you recognize you lack the necessary competence for a specific case, is to decline it and help the client find someone who is qualified, which is a referral. Simply informing the parents isn't sufficient. You still shouldn't take a case you aren't competent to handle safely and effectively. Don't be afraid to say no if a case is outside your skill set. It's the responsible thing to do. Question 7. When storing client records, what is an essential ethical consideration? A. Keeping them in a locked cabinet or secure digital system. B. storing them at your personal home for easy access. C. Sharing them with colleagues for discussion purposes. D. Keeping them indefinitely, even after services end. Answer: A. Keeping them in a locked cabinet or secure digital system. This question is about the ethical handling and storage of confidential client records. Client records contain sensitive information, and protecting their privacy is paramount. The ethical guideline requires you to store records securely to prevent unauthorized access. This means using physical locks for paper files or secure, password-protected, and often encrypted systems for digital records. Storing them insecurely at home, sharing them freely with colleagues, unless directly involved in the client's care and with consent/proper procedures, or keeping them forever, there are retention requirements, but not indefinitely, are all unethical practices. Secure storage is a fundamental requirement for maintaining confidentiality and protecting client privacy. Always treat client records like the highly sensitive documents they are. Question 8. You are developing a behavior intervention plan for a client. According to ethical guidelines, what should this plan prioritize? A. The convenience of the staff implementing the plan. B. The desires of the funding source. C. Procedures that are evidence-based and in the client's best interest. D. The quickest way to stop the challenging behavior. Answer: C. Procedures that are evidence-based and in the client's best interest. This question tests your understanding of the ethical responsibility to act in the client's best interest and use scientifically supported methods when developing interventions. The focus should always be on what is best for the client's well-being and progress, using strategies proven to be effective. Evidence-based, staff convenience, the funding source's desires, or simply stopping behavior without considering the function or teaching replacement skills are secondary or irrelevant compared to the client's needs and the use of effective ethical procedures. Ethical behavior analysts prioritize the client's dignity, safety, and long-term welfare. Always remember that the client's needs and the science should guide your intervention choices, not convenience or external pressures. Question 9. You suspect that a colleague is behaving unethically, specifically by using a potentially harmful intervention without proper oversight. What is your ethical responsibility first? A. Immediately report them to the ethics board. B. Discuss your concerns directly with the colleague, if possible. C. Ignore it. It's not your problem. D. Gossip about it with other colleagues to see if they agree. Answer: B. Discuss your concerns directly with the colleague, if possible. This question is about the ethical responsibility to address potential ethical violations by colleagues. The guidelines suggest a layered approach. While serious violations require reporting, the first step, if appropriate and feasible, is usually to try and resolve the issue informally by discussing your concerns directly with the colleague. This gives them an opportunity to explain or correct the issue. Ignoring it or gossiping about it are unprofessional and unethical responses. Reporting to the ethics board is a later step, typically taken if direct discussion isn't possible, doesn't resolve the issue, or if the violation is severe and likely to cause harm. Starting with a direct professional conversation is often the required initial step. Think of it as trying to resolve an issue face-to-face before escalating it. Question 10. When conducting an assessment, what is an ethical requirement regarding the assessment methods? A. Use only methods that are quick and easy to implement. B. Use methods that are appropriate for the client's age, skill level, and culture. C. Only use assessments you developed yourself. D. Use methods that show the client in the worst possible light. Answer: B. Use methods that are appropriate for the client's age, skill level, and culture. This question is about ethical considerations in assessment. The key concept is selecting appropriate assessment methods. Ethical practice demands that assessments are chosen carefully to fit the individual client. This means considering factors like their age, what they can understand, any cultural background that might influence their responses, and their overall abilities. Using quick/easy methods, only your own tools, or methods designed to make the client look bad are all unethical. The assessment should be designed to gather accurate, meaningful information about the client's behavior and skills in a way that respects their individuality and context. Choose assessment methods that give you the most accurate picture of the client while being respectful of who they are. Question 11. You are a BCBA supervising an RBT who is also a close family friend. What ethical guideline are you potentially violating? A. Confidentiality. B. Competence. C. Avoiding multiple relationships. D. Responsible conduct. Answer. C. Avoiding multiple relationships. This question addresses the ethical standard of avoiding multiple relationships. A multiple relationship occurs when a behavior analyst has both a professional relationship, like supervisor/supervisee, and another type of relationship, like family friend, romantic partner, business partner, with the same person. This can cloud judgment, create conflicts of interest, and impair objectivity. While you might be competent and responsible, the fact that the supervisee is a close family friend creates a dual role that is generally considered unethical to avoid these potential problems. Confidentiality might be impacted by a multiple relationship, but the core violation here is the relationship itself. It's usually best to keep professional and personal relationships separate to maintain clear boundaries and objectivity. Question 12. You finished working with a client and services are terminating. Ethically, how long must you retain their client records? A. You can dispose of them immediately upon termination. B. For a minimum of 7 years from the last date of service. C. For as long as you want. There's no specific rule. D. Only until the client asks you to dispose of them. Answer. B. For a minimum of 7 years from the last date of service. This question is about record retention, a specific ethical requirement for how long you must keep client records after services end. The guideline states that you must retain full client records for a minimum of 7 years from the date of the last service. This ensures that records are available if needed for legal, professional, or historical purposes. Disposing of them immediately or only upon client request doesn't meet the standard. While laws in some places might require longer retention, the ethical minimum is 7 years. Think of it as a professional obligation to maintain a history of the services provided for a set period. Question 13. What is the primary purpose of a functional behavior assessment, FBA, from an ethical standpoint? A. To determine if a client is capable of learning. B. To figure out the function, purpose, of a behavior to develop an effective ethical intervention. C. To label a client with a specific diagnosis. D. To justify the cost of behavior analysis services. Answer. B. To figure out the function, purpose, of a behavior to develop an effective ethical intervention. This question asks about the ethical purpose of a functional behavior assessment, FBA. An FBA is a process to understand why a behavior is happening, what triggers it, and what the person gets out of it, its function. Ethically, understanding the function is crucial because it allows you to develop interventions that are effective. By addressing the root cause, and ethical, by teaching appropriate replacement behaviors instead of just trying to stop the behavior. Determining learning capability, or getting a diagnosis, isn't the primary ethical purpose of an FBA. Justifying costs is irrelevant. Conducting a thorough FBA ensures you understand the behavior's purpose, leading to a more humane and effective plan. It's about understanding why before trying to change the behavior. Question 14. You are working on a research project. Ethically, what must you obtain from participants before they take part in the study? A. A letter of recommendation from a friend. B. Informed consent, explaining the study's purpose, procedures, risks, and benefits. C. Only verbal agreement, as written consent is difficult. D. Payment for their participation. Answer. B. Informed consent, explaining the study's purpose, procedures, risks, and benefits. This question focuses on ethical considerations in research, specifically obtaining permission from participants. Just like with clinical services, anyone participating in a research study has the right to know what they are getting into. Informed consent in research means fully explaining the study, including its goals, what participants will be asked to do, any potential risks or benefits, how their data will be used, and that their participation is voluntary and they can withdraw at any time. This explanation is typically provided both verbally and in writing, and the participant gives their documented agreement. Written consent is the standard unless specifically waived by an ethics review board under certain conditions. A letter of recommendation or just verbal agreement isn't sufficient, and while payment might be involved, it's separate from the consent process itself. Ethical research prioritizes the voluntary and informed participation of individuals. Question 15. You are a BCBA working for an agency. Your supervisor asks you to implement a procedure that you believe is not in the client's best interest and may be harmful. What is your ethical obligation? A. Implement the procedure as directed by your supervisor. B. Refuse immediately and quit your job. C. Discuss your concerns with your supervisor and try to find an ethical alternative. D. Secretly modify the procedure without telling your supervisor. Answer. C. Discuss your concerns with your supervisor and try to find an ethical alternative. This question addresses ethical conflicts when your professional judgment clashes with a supervisor's directive. The concept is advocating for your client and navigating ethical dilemmas within an organization. Simply following a harmful directive is unethical. Quitting might be a last resort, but isn't the first step. Secretly changing things is dishonest and lacks professional communication. The ethical path is to communicate your concerns professionally and clearly to your supervisor, explaining why you believe the procedure is problematic based on ethical principles and the client's needs, and attempting to collaborate on a more ethical approach. If the issue cannot be resolved within the organization, further steps might be necessary, but voicing your concerns is the required first step. Your primary ethical duty is to the client, even when it means challenging a superior. Question 16. When using reinforcement procedures, what is an ethical consideration related to deprivation? A. You should always keep clients slightly deprived of preferred items to make reinforcement stronger. B. You should only use reinforcement and never punishment. C. You should avoid unnecessary deprivation and use reinforcement ethically and humanely. D. Deprivation is not an ethical issue in ABA. Answer. C. You should avoid unnecessary deprivation and use reinforcement ethically and humanely. This question is about the ethical use of reinforcement, specifically regarding the concept of deprivation. For something to work well as a reinforcer, the client needs to want it, and often this involves some level of deprivation. They haven't had it recently. However, ethically, you must avoid unnecessary or harmful deprivation. You shouldn't intentionally withhold essential items, like food or comfort, just to make other things more reinforcing, nor should you cause distress. Reinforcement should be used in a way that is respectful, effective, and maintains the client's dignity and well-being. Simply stating you should only use reinforcement ignores that punishment procedures, when necessary, must also be used ethically. Deprivation is an ethical issue to be managed carefully. Ethical practice balances the science of reinforcement with humane considerations. Question 17. You are developing a skill acquisition program for a client. Ethically, the goals of this program should be based on A. What the funding source wants the client to learn. B. Your personal goals for the client. C. The client's needs, preferences, and input, or their guardians. D. Standard developmental milestones, regardless of the client's current abilities. Answer. C. The client's needs, preferences, and input, or their guardians. This question is about the ethical development of intervention plans, specifically focusing on goal setting. Ethical practice dictates that intervention goals should be individualized and client-centered. This means the goals should be relevant and meaningful to the client's life and based on their specific needs. what they and their family want to achieve, and what is appropriate given their skills and circumstances. Basing goals solely on funding requirements, your own ideas, or rigid, age-based milestones without considering the individual is not ethical. The client, or their legal guardian, should have a significant voice in determining what skills are targeted. Your work should empower the client and improve their life in ways that are important to them. Question 18. When discussing a client's case with a colleague who is also on the treatment team, what is an important ethical consideration? A. You can discuss the case anywhere, including in public spaces. B. You should only discuss the case in a private, secure location. C. You only need to use the client's initials. D. You can share photos or videos of the client without permission if it helps the discussion. Answer. B. You should only discuss the case in a private, secure location. This question relates to maintaining confidentiality during professional discussions. Even when discussing a client with other professionals who are directly involved in their care, you must still protect their privacy. Discussing sensitive information in public places where others could overhear, like a coffee shop or hallway, is a breach of confidentiality. While using initials might add a layer of privacy, it's not a guarantee, and the location is the key factor here. Sharing photos or videos requires explicit consent. Ethical discussions about clients should always occur in private settings, where the conversation cannot be easily overheard, like a closed office or secure virtual meeting. Protect your client's privacy by being mindful of your surroundings when discussing their information. Question 19. You are asked to provide expert testimony in a court case related to a former client. Ethically, what is required before you can disclose confidential information? A. You can disclose anything as it's a legal proceeding. B. You need a specific court order or subpoena and ensure you only disclose information relevant to the issues at hand. C. You only need the lawyer's request. D. You can only state your name and credentials. Answer. B. You need a specific court order or subpoena and ensure you only disclose information relevant to the issues at hand. This question addresses the ethical handling of confidential information when faced with legal requests, like a court case. While legal proceedings can sometimes require the disclosure of confidential information, you cannot simply share it because a lawyer asks or because it's in court. Ethically, you must typically receive a formal court order or a valid subpoena compelling your testimony. Even then, you are usually only permitted to disclose the minimum amount of information necessary and directly relevant to the specific legal issues being discussed, while still trying to protect the client's privacy as much as possible. Simply stating your name isn't sufficient if ordered to testify, but uncontrolled disclosure is also wrong. A court order or subpoena is the necessary legal gateway, but you still need to be careful about what you share. Question 20. You are asked by a parent to provide services for their child, but you observe significant signs of neglect in the home. What is your ethical responsibility? A. Ignore it and focus only on providing behavior services. B. Report your observations to the appropriate Child Protective Services agency. C. Discuss your concerns with the parent only. D. Document it in your private notes and do nothing further. Answer. B. Report your observations to the appropriate Child Protective Services agency. This question addresses mandated reporting, a critical ethical and legal obligation. Behavior analysts are typically mandated reporters, meaning they are legally required to report suspected child abuse, neglect, or exploitation to the proper authorities, like Child Protective Services. Ignoring it is unethical and illegal. Discussing only with the parent might put the child at further risk. Documenting is necessary, but it's not a substitute for making the report. When you suspect abuse or neglect, your ethical and legal duty is to report it to the designated agency to ensure the child's safety. This overrides standard confidentiality principles in order to protect a vulnerable person. Question 21. You have a conflict of interest because a potential client is also your neighbor. Ethically, what should you do? A. Provide services anyway, just be extra careful. B. decline to provide services due to the multiple relationship and refer elsewhere. C. Ask the client to sign a waiver acknowledging the relationship. D. Only provide indirect services like parent training. Answer B. Decline to provide services due to the multiple relationship and refer elsewhere. This question circles back to avoiding multiple relationships and conflicts of interest. The fact that the potential client is also your neighbor creates a dual relationship, professional and neighbor. As discussed before, these multiple roles can compromise your objectivity and professional judgment. While waivers might be used in some situations with strict safeguards and indirect services are less intense, the cleanest and most ethical approach when a clear multiple relationship exists is to avoid taking on the client entirely and refer them to another qualified professional who does not have that pre-existing relationship. It's usually best to avoid mixing professional roles with personal connections. Question 22. You are tracking data on a client's behavior. What is an ethical consideration regarding this data? A. You should only record data that shows progress. B. You must collect data accurately and honestly, even if it doesn't show desired progress. C. You can make up data if you miss a session. D. Data collection is not an ethical issue. Answer B. You must collect data accurately and honestly, even if it doesn't show desired progress. This question is about the ethical principle of maintaining data integrity. Data is the foundation of behavior analysis, and ethical practice requires that you collect, record, and report data truthfully and accurately. Only recording positive data, making up data, or believing data collection isn't an ethical issue are all serious violations. Your clinical decisions are based on this data, and inaccurate data can lead to ineffective or even harmful interventions. Even if the data doesn't show the progress you hoped for, it's crucial to record exactly what happened. Honesty and accuracy in data collection are non-negotiable. Question 23. You are giving a public presentation about behavior analysis. What is an ethical responsibility regarding the information you present? A. You can make exaggerated claims about the effectiveness of ABA. B. You should present information accurately and supported by scientific evidence. C. You should only share anecdotal stories, not data. D. You don't need to worry about ethics in public presentations. Answer. B. You should present information accurately and supported by scientific evidence. This question is about ethical conduct in public statements. When representing yourself or the field of behavior analysis publicly, you have an ethical responsibility to be truthful and base your statements on scientific evidence. Making exaggerated claims, relying solely on personal stories without data, or ignoring ethics altogether are all inappropriate. Your public statements should accurately reflect the current understanding and effectiveness of behavior analysis interventions as supported by research. Be factual and responsible when talking about ABA to the public. Question 24. You are providing supervision to an RBT. Ethically, how often are you required to supervise them? A. Only when they ask for help. B. A minimum of 5% of the hours they provide behavior analytic services each month. C. Once every few months is sufficient. D. Only if they are having problems. Answer B. A minimum of 5% of the hours they provide behavior analytic services each month. This question tests your knowledge of the specific requirements for supervising RBTs, which is an ethical obligation for BCBAs. The ethical standards and certification requirements mandate specific supervision ratios to ensure the RBT is receiving adequate guidance and support. The requirement is a minimum of 5% of the hours the RBT spends providing behavior analytic services each month. This isn't just for when they ask for help or are having problems. It's a regular, ongoing requirement to ensure quality services and professional development. Providing this minimum level of supervision is key to supporting your supervisees and protecting client welfare. Question 25. Before implementing a punishment procedure, what ethical considerations must be addressed? A. Punishment should always be the first intervention tried. B. Less restrictive, effective procedures, like reinforcement, must be considered and attempted first. C. Only the BCBA's consent is needed. D. Punishment requires less data collection than reinforcement. Answer: B. Less restrictive, effective procedures, like reinforcement, must be considered and attempted first. This question addresses the ethical considerations surrounding the use of punishment procedures. Punishment can involve aversive stimuli or consequences and carries potential risks. Ethically, behavior analysts are required to consider and attempt less restrictive, yet effective, procedures, like reinforcement and extinction, combined with teaching replacement behaviors, before resorting to punishment. This is often referred to as the hierarchy of restrictive interventions. Punishment should only be considered when less restrictive methods have been tried and found ineffective, and it must be implemented with extreme caution, careful data collection, ongoing assessment, and proper consent, always prioritizing the client's safety and dignity. Punishment is not a first resort and requires significant ethical consideration.